So I think we can probably going to get started. Welcome everyone to the ClearAdmit MBA Essay Insight webinar series. I'm going to just make a quick intro and bring everyone on so we can get started because we have a lot to cover today. So I'm Graham. I'm going to moderate the session. I'm the co-founder of ClearAdmit. That's all you really need to know about me because I want to try to make room for all of our guests to speak and go through everything today. So I'll get out of the way here as much as possible. Just wanted to introduce everyone one by one here. First up, we've got Megan Grady, who's Associate Director for Master's Admissions at Carnegie Mellon University's Tepper School of Business. Hi, Megan. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. Happy to be
here. It's a total pleasure. Next up, we've got Claire Norton, who's the Senior Associate Dean of Enrollment Management at Columbia Business School. Hi, Claire. Welcome.
Hi, so excited to be here with everyone.
Yeah, we're really happy to have you. Next up, we've got Nathan Eisenberg, who's Senior Associate Director of Admissions at Michigan Ross. Hi, Nathan.
Hey, Graham. Welcome, everyone. Happy Wednesday. I'm excited to share a little bit more about our essays.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to it. And we also have Nicole Wilhite, who's Assistant Director of Full-Time MBA Admissions and Student Recruitment at UNC's Kenan-Flagler School of Business. Hey, Nicole.
Hi, Graham. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to speak with you all today.
Yeah, we're again very happy to have you along. And last but not least, we have Laurel Grodman, who's the Assistant Dean for Admissions at Yale School of Management. Hi, Laurel.
Hi, Graham. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me here today.
It's a pleasure. So let's dive right in because, as I said, we have a lot to cover. I did want to remind everyone that's tuning in that at the end of this session, we will allow each school to bounce off into an individual Zoom breakout. We'll get you links for those when the time comes, and you'll be able to ask these folks questions. And so for the main session, though, we'll ask you to kind of hold your questions because you'll be able to interact individually with these institutions at the end of the main session. So stay tuned for that. But let's sort of dive right in, and we're going to get things started with Megan. I wanted to ask you, when do you read the essays in the application? Like, where does that fall for you over at Tepper? And how much time do you typically spend reading someone's full application?
Yeah, we're usually reading the essays actually at a couple points in the application process. So when we're going through the first round of reading, obviously that's a big part of it, but also as we're doing interview preparation, we read through the essay as well prior to an interview. And then of course we go through a couple more rounds of application reading and committee. So there's several touch points.
And yeah.
Oh, and sorry. And for the second question, how much time do we typically spend reading a full application? I feel like part of my first answer answered that question of there's several rounds of people who are taking a look at an application and easily, I'd say an hour at least per round of that. So up to about 4 hours per application.
Okay. So I'm sure people are happy to hear that, all the work they're putting in is getting quite a bit of attention, from your team. That's great. I wanted to turn now to Claire at Columbia. Can you sort of walk us through the same questions? Like, when do you look at the essays in the application? Is there any kind of set order that the team is sort of following? And then, how much time does the team spend reading an app?
Yeah, so thank you. Great question. And I think it's an important one because it does underscore how important the essays are. I know that they're hard to do. And obviously we're having a session today about them because they can be a complicated part for folks, but they are so critical. So we often, look at them very early in our review of the application, if not as the very first item, certainly quite early in our starting to take a look. How much time do we spend with an application can obviously vary a bit by application. But, I totally agree with Megan's comment that, in the end, it's hours that each individual candidate is being reviewed. We also have a multi-step process for reviewing and reading applications. So not only, overall is it hours, but individuals are probably spending, 20, 30 minutes, maybe more with an individual candidate's essay many times along the way there. So, and And this is really the part where we feel like we get to know you. So I think we often like to start there because we just, it brings a candidate to life a bit, which is a nice place to start, and then learn more about your experiences and where you are at the moment and where you've been and things like that.
Okay, terrific. Yeah, appreciate that. Nathan, how about you over at Ross? When do you guys look at the essays and how long are you spending?
So this is going to sound very redundant, but same as the above. Really, I mean, we do not have a set cadence in which we read the application. It really comes through in many different ways, and we trust our team to kind of pick and choose the elements in which order makes the most sense for them to review the application. I personally read the essay second. So first, I read all the information you submit in your application form itself. Then I go straight to the essays because that's your bridge into who you are, what makes you unique in your own voice, rather than what you were able to fit into those limited fields within the application itself.
Mm-hmm.
And then similarly, when it comes to the review process, we do typically spend probably anywhere from 20 to 45 minutes reviewing every single application multiple times. So not only am I going to read the application, but at least 2 other members of our admissions committee will also read your application completely and fully in depth. Plus, we have, in the Michigan Ross perspective, outside alumni interviewers that will interview you blind. And so they will have another assessment of your application within the process. So overall, several hours we're reviewing every single application.
Okay. Yeah. And I appreciate everyone underlining that, because I think sometimes when candidates hear that it takes, 20 minutes to review a file, they're not taking into account the fact that you all are doing this several times in a row. Most every school has 2, if not 3, or even more reads happening for any given candidacy, right? So, all right, let's turn to Nicole now. So at UNC, how does it work there? When are you looking at the essays and how much time are you spending?
Yeah, so I'll just speak for myself, since we all kind of take the same multi-read approach. For me personally, I love the essays. They're my favorite part. So I go straight to those first. I'm a little bit different. I like to read them in a certain order. I really like the optional essay, tends to be my favorite. So I'll read them almost backwards in order. And then I go back, I do a deep dive scan into who the person is. And then I actually come back and I'll rescan the essays again. So that's just me personally. I know they are read though 3 times in total. And we spend, anywhere from that application probably gets about 4 hours of FaceTime with the admissions team when it's all said and done. So, yep.
Okay. Super helpful. Yeah. And I think one thing that is coming out is I think that it sounds like for all of you, each admissions, committee member can have some leeway in terms of like what they're picking and reading first or last, or there's not one like set way that you have to read it. But maybe Laurel's going to break that trend here. I don't know, Laurel, how is it done at Yale SOM?
No, sorry, Graham. It is it's very, very representative of what my colleagues here have said. Multiple reads, no set prescriptive order. I will say, I think by and large, just in terms of how the information is presented within your file, my guess is that the read probably comes after having scanned academic information and resume and kind of work experience for many readers. I'll say maybe one notable exception is one part of our process of having kind of multiple eyes on a file. Myself and a very small number of other team members will take a final look at all candidates who we are pretty close to not moving forward in the process with, just to make sure we haven't missed anything. And that's the point where I will actually start with the essays in that sense, because I really want to have that context setting before I look at the other information, knowing that that other information has already been closely vetted. So that's a little twist, I think, on where the essay might come into play at that specific point in the process.
Interesting. But I think another like point in favor of what you all are doing and the holistic nature of it, and the sense that people should really not be worried about their application, quote, kind of falling through the cracks or something. I mean, you guys are spending a lot of time reviewing and making sure that no one, even those who maybe have been flagged to not make it through, are getting that last kind of look. So really great to hear that. So now what I wanted to do is move into kind of the second part of today's session, which is getting, really into the nitty gritty with each of you about your process and your essays. So we're going to start with Tepper and Megan again. And I just, what I would like for you to do, Megan, is take us through, one of these, I mean, you have the video essay, you have the main essay, but take us through one element and just tell us sort of like where did the question come from? And what are you guys looking for when assessing? And then I'll probably have a follow-on question for you, I'm sure, but let's start there.
Sounds great. I would love to talk actually about, because I feel like the video essay is pretty self-explanatory. So I'd love to talk about our written essay number 1, which really focuses around the area of inclusivity. And so at Tepper, we're a fairly small program with right around kind of usually just under 200 students per full-time cohort. And so we are looking for students who can articulate how they're able to become really involved and create really collaborative environments with those around them. And so in our essay, we kind of leave it open-ended because we don't necessarily always look for a professional example. We look for kind of any way that they can showcase where they've been supportive and inclusive in an environment. And so that can range from professional experiences to personal experiences. Some students will even kind of talk about a college experience and then build on how they've kind of honed in on that skill set over the course of their time since their degree. And so that's the type of student that we're looking for. So I think this question just really reflects the type of student who would thrive at Tepper. And so that's why we don't necessarily focus on, well, yes, it's the video essay. It's not why it's why in our written component, we're not having people articulate what their career goals are or their experiences. That's what the resume is for. That's what the video essay is for. That's what a lot of the interview components are about as well. But this really gives the opportunity for students to shine in kind of who they are as a person and what makes them tick and how they work with others and the thoughtfulness that is behind that, or how they've learned thoughtfulness through the process of participating in or creating an inclusive environment. So for us, that's kind of where that question stems from is students who have really strong essay responses for this tend to be the ones who are most likely to really feel successful in our program.
Got it. So I want to underline something here and ask you kind of a question. So in this essay, it says, provide an example of when you experienced or created an inclusive environment. And so I'm thinking of like, imagine a candidate who helped create an inclusive environment at kind of on a very small scale, like part of like a club they were involved in college or some small kind of work thing versus someone who's actually experiencing maybe via their employer a lot of initiatives that are not their own, but that's creating a really inclusive environment at work. Mm-hmm. Like, is there because those are sort of different. In one case, the candidate is very much an actor in it, but it's maybe very small scale. And the other, they might be making really interesting observations about what's working on a much larger scale. So I noticed you asked for either, but I'm just wondering, like, what advice would you have to someone who's kind of struggling with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we leave that purposely open-ended because we know not everyone will have the same opportunities or access for experiences, especially because I think a lot of people identify when they've created something as something maybe through a more formal leadership or managerial role, even though any of us can kind of create amongst teams, or I think sometimes people are afraid to talk about experiences that don't feel like MBA aligned, and that's its own thing in the application process. And really what it comes down to is how is an applicant able to reflect on what their experience has been, whether it's something that they've been asked or maybe even told to participate in. So kind of using your example of this is something they've been told to do at work that they have to participate in versus maybe something where they've been a little more proactive, which even in that instance, sometimes that can come from an area where they've been asked to take a lead on something, or I don't know about anyone else, but I often defaulted to club leadership in college and had to create communities and environments, whether I had really intended to or not. And so really being able to kind of reflect on what that meant to them and how that helped them grow and what lessons they've taken from those experiences kind of on either end of the spectrum, and how they embody that in their day-to-day, or how they're planning to kind of bring that into an MBA program, and how it kind of reflects on who they are as a person and how they approach kind of, again, just working with others and building community, is really where we see those essays going.
Okay, excellent. Appreciate you kind of elaborating on that. I don't know if this is still the case for this year, and I don't know if it's going to put you on the spot a little bit, but I know that your application form has often had this question about the post MBA career goal. It's like a short response, and it often says, "Tell us your goal and what is your plan B if that goal doesn't work out." And I wondered, are you still asking that, or and maybe you don't know yet? And if so, like, where did that come from? Because I think it's a really interesting idea to sort of gauge someone's flexibility or ability to pivot. But I don't know if that's still going to be a part of things this year.
Yeah, I don't know if it's, I don't know if we're going to keep using the language plan B. I think our career services team doesn't love that. So I think that's a language issue on our part. Because really the way that when we kind of are going through the admission process and then working with our career services team as we're kind of transitioning students into the enrollment period and preparing for them to arrive in August and begin next week, the way career services approaches it with students is when they're working with students on kind of what their first choice, so to speak, vertical is, they really like to think of that plan B as more of a parallel path of you're keeping options open. You see things going this way. You might also be interested in things going this way, and just really making sure that they understand that students can understand how they can prepare for kind of an either or scenario. And also, of course, too, I mean, the whole point of going to school is to have an open mind. And we've certainly seen students change their mind from plan A, plan B, and picking up plan C and being able to kind of navigate that, but just understanding kind of the differences between maybe where they're coming in, where it is they want to go, and maybe what an alternative, maybe better aligned pathway might be, or equally aligned pathway, but allowing some flexibility. So if you come in and you say, I'm going to be a consultant, and you decide, well, actually, I might want to go more of an entrepreneurship route, that we're not saying that door closed before you even arrived. We're saying, okay, let's look at what those pathways would look like, where they're related, and kind of how you could pursue them, and kind of pick which maybe comes first in your career or something.
Okay. Super helpful. Appreciate that. And I do want to say, yeah, I presume, most people tuning in have noted that, many MBA programs will ask you about your career plans. And I do want to stress that when you graduate, it's not like in order to hand you the diploma, they say, wait a second, let's go back to that essay and make sure that you're about to leave and do what you said you were going to do. So there is flexibility, but I think it's still a really useful exercise to think through what you would like to do at this point, and to have maybe a parallel path, as you said, too. I think it's a really great approach that you all are taking with this. So,
and to make sure that we can support it too. That's kind of another layer of
Yeah.
it as well, is that if you're wanting something that we can't offer, then we're
Yeah.
not going to,
Right.
you may not be aligned, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. All right. So thanks, Megan, for shedding light on your essays. Let's move on and talk with Claire a little bit about Columbia Business School. Now, Claire, I think I mentioned to you, we have 2 slides because you have a couple of different essays. So you can direct us where you want us to go. But again, the goal is for you to take us through one of your questions and elaborate on where it came from and any advice you have for people.
Great. So yes, we do have 3 questions that we ask folks to talk about, but I thought it would be useful to talk mostly about essay 2 today, because it is one that we have reintroduced this cycle. And we did that for a number of reasons. I mean, I think, this essay is sort of representative in some ways of our community, and also allows us to understand some things about how candidates see themselves engaging in our community. The Phillips Pathway for Inclusive Leadership is a program that was created based on the profound research of our late professor, Catherine Phillips, who was really beloved here. This just gives us a chance to both put forward to folks some things that we think are important and kind of part of our value system, and also I think often the point you were just making, right? There's a lot of talk about career plans in our sort of education area. And while that's one important part, there is a lot of education that happens in your MBA, right? So I think this question for us also centers some of the skills and growth opportunity that's going to exist for folks while they're, undergoing their education. And so for me, it helps us to both give you as candidates an opportunity to think about how you're going to engage, maybe in a different way than some of the other questions and prompts that are out there. So we're really looking for you to, give us an active perspective here, right? Show us something, some way that you've engaged in some of this. And I think some of what Megan said about her question applies here as well. I think, we sort of give you a bit of a roadmap here saying like, a time or a situation. So we've, given you that. We're asking to hear about the actions that you took, right? And the outcomes, right? We've sort of given you a little bit of a roadmap to talk through any one of these topics. And I think you can both, reflect what that experience was for you. And again, how you sort of envision that maybe being something that you can continue to grow, demonstrate growth or have an opportunity to grow and change while you're with us, right? We're putting it out there that this is something that we're going to help teach folks, that inclusive leadership to us feels important. And so we're not asking you to come to us sort of fully formed, so to speak, right? So it's okay to say like, that was the first time I interacted with something like this, or I hadn't ever thought about this kind of situation before, right? Like we're not asking you to be, as you were just saying, right, the person who created the program or the thing necessarily, right? We're just kind of trying to get a sense of how you think about this, and that helps us understand, how you're going to be part of a learning team here, how you're going to be part of a cluster here, how you're going to engage throughout your experience academically and co-curricularly, and whether this is a place that will really align with your interests, and with something that, again, we think is a really important outcome for students in our program.
Yeah, that's super helpful. I mean, I think particularly the way this is worded, there's this preamble, but the main question is worded in such a way that there is totally a roadmap to answering it. I feel like you're giving the candidates a lot of guidelines in terms of like how they could go about sort of structuring the response, which is really useful. I want to shift gears and ask you a follow-up that's about, I think it was on essay 1. I don't know if we can go back a slide and just look at that, but this is, let's see, somewhere it was, so there's this comment in essay 1 that says, it's the last bit where it says, what are your career goals? And then it says, what is your long-term dream job? And I love this question, because often it's just, what's your short-term goal? What's your long-term goal? But I interpret long-term dream job as like, I mean, for me, at least, it feels like you're giving people an opportunity to really think big, and broadly, right? So, but maybe walk us through that. Like, is that the intention there? Is there, or does it have to be like super grounded? Like, first I'm going to be a consultant and then I'll take a job in industry, and, or can they be like, I want to be CEO of a media company or whatever it would be like? So yeah, walk us through that.
Absolutely. No, I think that you are right on, Graham. I think it's intended to at least give that space, right? So I don't think we're requiring everyone to say like, and then one day I'm going to be the person who, figures out how to bring, energy change to companies globally or whatever, right? Like we don't all have to have that full life plan ready just to apply to this program. But on the other hand, we know, right? And you sort of said it again before too, that again, the whole point of this endeavor that you're all considering going on is that you're going to have new experiences and learn new things. So many of us are asking you to think about what career goal or path you see yourself coming out of this with. But we also know that many of you are going to change that once you get into our programs and meet your student colleagues and meet our faculty and have opportunities to engage with industry and research in lots of different ways. So I think that part of that for us is that what we often want to see throughout this process is just some introspection and some sense of why an MBA program kind of writ large and our MBA program specifically feel like a fit for you, for your goals and for the things that you're trying to accomplish. And so I think we feel like the ability to really go to the dream here, if that's how you think about things, just lets us understand and appreciate how the program is going to really be a fit for you and be something that you'll rely on throughout your career, forevermore.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I appreciate you like humoring me and going into the little nitty gritty on that. It's just that one word, dream, right? That's there that really shapes this a little bit differently from some of your peers. I'm also seeing people sharing some fun dream job ideas in the chat, which is cool. Let's move on and talk with Nathan at Ross. Nathan, same drill here. Take us through one of your essay prompts and give us the origin story, what you're looking for, any advice you have, and then I'll probably follow up with some questions.
Yeah, so as you can see, our essays are very open-ended and the response words are pretty short. So for this exercise right now, I'm going to really highlight in on the essay question in group one, the last one. I was aware that I was different when. Now, don't answer this question just because it's the one that I'm focusing on today, but I like this question because the examples that were given from the last two institutions were really focusing on creating or really living and thriving in an inclusive environment. This kind of question, I think, takes that same approach, but from a backwards perspective. Knowing and understanding what your differences are incredibly important for you to understand how you can work with other peers, with classmates, with working professionals, both in industry and in the world when you graduate. And so it's that opportunity for us to really understand, number one, diversity comes in all factors for Michigan Ross, beyond just age, sex, sexual orientation, and it really ethnicity. And we really want a diversity when it comes to world experiences, backgrounds, perspectives, life experiences. And so understanding your differences helps you be introspective and understand the value that you get to add to the teams that you're going to be on, as well as understand maybe strengths and areas for improvement and growth opportunities when you come to the MBA program. So by understanding your differences, you now understand also how to create a more inclusive environment, how to work with others that might not be in the same working atmosphere as you, that might not have the same working relationship. And it's just a really good way to showcase some of the values that we aspire to be true at Michigan Ross, like understanding your differences, being authentic, being vulnerable when you come to an MBA program, and being able to learn and grow and develop. You're coming to an MBA program for those reasons at its core. You're looking to either grow professionally, personally, a combination of both. And so being able to be reflective, introspective about how you see yourself as being unique, being different, and really showcasing that, that's how we get to know who you are, what your values are, and how those align to the program. So that's kind of how we backed into those questions and why we really want to kind of, in that first group, get to understand something intrinsic to who you are and who you believe that you are and how you believe you're going to show up. Because what you bring to the program is equally as important as what you expect to take from the educational opportunity within the 2 years.
Okay, yeah, excellent. I'm glad that you like honed in on one very specific. I think it's super helpful. I want to just back out 1 second on this first question. And I'm noting like, so there's kind of group one and group two. And like part of me is like, wow, group one is a little bit about like differences and maybe like strengths. And group two is a bit more about, you know, areas for development or kind of moments when someone's, I wouldn't say weaknesses, but just, you know, challenges and things that they maybe need to overcome, et cetera. Am I thinking of these right? I mean, is that what you guys were going for in developing these two groups? And yeah, because it's just an interesting contrast to me.
Yeah, no, you hit it right, the nail right on the head. It's really these two buckets. Like the first bucket in group one is really us trying to get to know intrinsically what makes you tick, how you perceive yourself, what you think is really important factors of who you are and your identity. Group two is really about that vulnerability, that introspection, that opportunity for you to think about a time where you were outside of your comfort zone, when you were challenged, when you were really uncomfortable or faced adversity. Because another big important part of being successful, I would argue, not only in an MBA program, but professionally, is learning how to move forward from failure or challenges. And so this is about resilience. It's about really understanding how you face challenges real time when they arise, either personally or professionally. Because when you're in the classroom, you're going to work with people that don't work well with you. You're going to have projects that really stump you, and you're going to do presentations that fail and fail fast. But it's all about how do you overcome or move forward from those challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what we're looking for in group two. So again, group one, what makes you tick? Group two, how do you handle challenges when they're faced?
Okay, excellent. One thing, if you'll humor me, I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
So your career essay here is short. I mean, it's 150 words.
Yeah.
Any advice? Because that's a bit shorter. Now, granted, some schools are asking for short term and long term and other things too, but this is still on the shorter side. So any advice to someone who's trying to tackle this one?
Yeah, and we have been really strategic at making these responses short, because at the end of the day, when you go to any MBA program and you start recruiting, it happens that first semester, that first month that you're on campus. And so being able to articulate your short-term goal really succinctly is important if you think about those elevator pitches. So being able to sit down with the recruiter right away and be able to really address short term, like, this is what I'm interested in doing. This is why I'm interested, why it's salient for me, because we know that you're going to need to leverage that articulation. You're going to need to leverage what your goals are immediately when you get on campus. And so cutting out all the additional noise, all the additional background, thinking about you're on an elevator with a C-suite professional, you've got that, 4 floors to tell them why you're the best person for this job. That's kind of why we really honed in on a shorter response rate, because again, effectively, we want to understand that you have an idea of how to make the most of those experiences. As echoed earlier, we're not going back to you at graduation and saying, hey, when you wrote essay 2, you said that you were interested in entrepreneurship, but I see now that you're graduating, you're going to a big 4 firm. It really couldn't be further from the truth. We just want to make sure that there's that through line, that understanding of, again, it's a relationship with an MBA program. It's not a transactional MBA where you come, do your classes, and go home. We expect you to be able to give back not only to your peers, but also your classmates, and help them through the recruitment process too. And so these questions are really just, again, getting an idea for you to know, how are you not only going to take from an MBA program, but also give back throughout the experience.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, thanks for shedding light on that too. Before we move on to Nicole at UNC, I did want to just, I see some questions coming up in the chat. Just want to remind everyone that at the end of this main session, each of our panelists, so you'll be able to go off and interact with each of our panelists in an individual Zoom breakout, and we'll get you links for those as we wrap up. So stay tuned. You can get your individual questions answered there. Let's move on though. Nicole, let's talk a little bit about UNC. And I know some of this stuff is like, I guess, hot off the presses and maybe not exactly finalized yet, because I know we're there's been a lot of schools change their essays in the summer, and we always try to be very early in this process and stuff. So, but yeah, walk us through something that you want to tell us about your process for this year.
Sure. So we will eventually be having 2 essays and then 1 optional essay. Our first essay is finalized and our second one is being finalized as we speak. So that will be posted hopefully by mid-August when we open our application. So I'm going to talk about the optional essay because I feel like it's the one that not everyone chooses to use, but one that is one of my favorites to actually read. And it's when I think about how people answer that optional essay, or how the best way to answer it, I guess, would be to anything that you think an admissions person would wonder about, or there's a blank somewhere on anywhere on your application. Don't let us fill in the blanks on our own, and just go ahead and address it, and don't be afraid to speak up. The world hasn't been particularly easy over the past couple of years. We understand that. We're also human beings. And so, it's okay to dive into maybe some struggles or some challenges that you've overcome. Shows resilience. Maybe that was some inconsistencies in academic performance, or something in a personal life. Obviously, you don't want you to go too deep dive into that, but just give us some context on what's happening in your life. Also, we are aware that there was a global pandemic, so addressing any kind of gaps in your work experience and things like that is completely fine and normal. But also, and I think it's interesting because students ask me a lot, how do I address both? So how do I address, all the struggles that I've had and how I've overcome that, with still wanting to tell you about myself? And it's about 200 words. Most choose just to break it into 2 different paragraphs, and that's completely fine, kind of addressing it each separately. But we love hearing more about you and your interests, and it's a great time, especially if you feel uncomfortable in interview to brag about yourself, and you do that better in writing, this is a great opportunity to do that, because not everyone feels comfortable, especially from different nationalities, talking about themselves, but highlight every accomplishment that you've done, big or small, in that section. We love to hear it. And so I'd say that's the one that you have this time in front of us, and people don't take advantage of it, which they should. It's the least pressure with the highest reward. And so that's one that I encourage people to take advantage of. And even if it's not 200 words and it's shorter, it's just something, 10 people tend to, as well, I typically ask a certain interview question when I'm interviewing, around, is there something you really wanted us to know that no one asked you throughout the entire application? And there's always something that they wish we would have asked. And so you can also use that essay as a way to answer that there too.
Got it. So I want to hold you here on this one just for a second, because the thing that jumps out at me with your optional essay is that many schools would have the first 4 items on the list here. So, is there something about your accomplishments or interests, or is there, I guess this fun fact bit like really jumps out at me, because, ordinarily an optional essay, a gap in a work experience, explaining recommenders, or some big thing that you needed to share, whereas fun fact feels a little bit more fun. Right. And so I feel like that is kind of almost like a cue for people to like dive in and do it, answer this question. Is that fair to say?
Yes, absolutely. I've seen anything from how many marshmallows someone can fit in their mouth to, anything that leaves a lasting impression, right? I think we just really have a blast learning about everything, because there's so much seriousness around,
Yes.
the essays, and so it's like, let's leave it in a light tone there at the end. And I have people, I've read lots of essays that they don't have anything else to address, and they just want to tell us about fun facts about themselves. And, they've hiked Mount Kilimanjaro, or something really unique about them, and why they love that. So Lucy used to figure skate. Exactly. So something fun like that, right? That, that just really sticks with us. And then sometimes you're lucky enough, you might have an interviewer want to elaborate on that with you, and they like hearing about it. So no, it is absolutely fun, and we welcome that.
Okay. And then going back to the first essay, which we can I don't know if we can move the slide back here, but I noticed that the first question has this kind of thing about, immediate career goals. And then, like what we talked about with Tepper, there's this little piece about, business world continues to evolve, circumstances can change. What else might you be interested in doing? So do you want to just elaborate on that? Because again, I think this is a really interesting question.
Absolutely. And the first thing people always ask us about, is, do I have to declare my concentration straight away? Do I have to know exactly what I'm doing? And absolutely not. Take these 2 years to pivot, to figure out what you want to do. Maybe you want to do an internship in something completely different that you weren't sure you were wanting to do at all. Or you start the program and you have an amazing professor in one of your classes and they inspire you. I've had students come in and say, I want to do investment banking. It's really important to me. And she actually started her own cracker company as an entrepreneur. So you come in and then you're around these amazing, brilliant people, professors as well, staff as well. We're also amazing. But come in and they get inspired by people around them. And so we just say, come in with a plan, know what you have, some sense of a direction, but don't be afraid to this is a great place to do something you wouldn't typically do, because you can fail here and it's okay. There's maybe a grade involved versus, a whole career falling apart and feeling that sort of sense of shame that people sometimes do, even though I'm super impressed with people who go out on their own. And so I think, just have a plan, but know that it's okay to be flexible and have a plan. And we don't like calling it plan B either, but having a backup, something else that that you, a certain skill set that you have maybe in your back pocket that you could bring out at another time. That's another option to think of. So,
yeah.
Happy.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent. Appreciate you elaborating on that. Laurel, you've been super patient, and I promise we'll start with you for the next round of questions here. But can you take us through, and actually, I don't know if everyone would know this, but you traditionally used to just have one topic, and now it's sort of a choose your own adventure. There are three choices here. So tell us about this, and however you want to go through it.
That's right, Graham. So if you apply to the Yale School of Management, you will just answer one essay prompt, but you have a choice of 3. And so they're describe the biggest commitment you've ever made, describe the community that's been most meaningful to you, or describe the most significant challenge you faced. And I'm actually going to talk about all of them collectively today, because for us, they're really part of a whole, which is helping us understand how you've approached something that has really mattered for you. So a little bit of the origin story here. The first option here, the commitment prompt, was really was our sole essay prompt for the last 6 or 7 years. And we liked it because your time in business school and the path that you take from here on out really do represent significant commitments in your life. And it's valuable for us to understand how you previously have approached a commitment of major importance. And so every year we discuss whether to make changes to the prompt, and every year for the last 6 or 7, we had said, no, we really like it. It's been a great prompt. We've gotten valuable information from it. But the reality of it is, as a business school, we only get a very small window into who you are as a person. And so we want to make that window as big as possible to allow you to tell your unique story. And then so this year we really stepped back and asked ourselves, is this the best prompt to give everyone a platform for talking about what's most important to them? Because that's what we really want to understand, what matters to you most and how you've approached it. And a commitment might be the right framework. It is for some, but it's not always. And so we chose to kind of telescope out from the sole framework of commitment and open it up to possibility of candidates describing what matters to them through a number of different frameworks, from the perspective of the commitment or the community or the challenge that has mattered most within your life. And I see this set of prompts as really reflective of what we value here as a community at Yale. So the mission of Yale SOM is to educate leaders for business and society. And so we want to bring people into the community who care about making an impact. And these tend to be people who are self-reflective and who learn from experience and who see something through the end, even when it isn't easy. And so I think these prompts give us 3 slightly different, though potentially overlapping, opportunities to show us, again, how you've approached something of real importance in your life. And in SOM admissions, we are big believers that the best predictors of how you'll behave in the future or how you've behaved in the past and how you've learned and responded to past experiences. And so, in general, our application process is very grounded in looking not just at aspirations, but in action and what sort of evidence-based support you give us for how you'll be a student and alum in the future. And so, again, I feel like all 3 of these prompts give you a different kind of angle through which to do that. And like I said, it's regardless of which prompt you choose, it's really the approach that you've taken to this commitment or to your community or to the challenges that you face that we're most interested in learning about. So a couple bits of advice for how to approach your responses here. So the prompts are intentionally broad. So the topic that you choose can be a personal one or a professional one. It can be something specific. It can be something more expansive. It's really up to you. We're not really making value judgments about the type of commitment or community or challenge that you've chosen to talk about. What we care most, again, about is that approach, how you've approached something that matters deeply to you. So whichever topic you choose, just be sure that you're being really specific and detailed rather than theoretical about why this thing matters to you. Be genuine, and my advice is don't overthink the topic too much. So when you ask yourself the question, what's most important to me? What matters to me most? What shaped me the most? Chances are there's 2 or 3 things that come to mind pretty quickly. And that's your starting point. Pick the one that you feel most comfortable writing about, that you feel like you have the most to say about. Don't worry so much about being memorable or unique. That's not really what we're looking for. It's just an opportunity to speak in your own voice about something meaningful and distinctive. And so don't spend much time worrying about whether it stands out relative to anyone else's topic. I'll mention each of these prompts has a couple of guiding questions beneath them. I definitely encourage you to use that to kind of help shape the direction of your question, and I think will give us exactly what we're looking to hear. The last thing I guess I'll note is, regardless of whether you pick a commitment or a community or a challenge, it's really maybe the commitment and challenge ones that this applies most to. It doesn't have to have kind of a neatly tied up ending. Let's think about the challenge example in particular. So we intentionally didn't ask this question as tell us about a challenge that you've overcome. And it's because we want to know how you've faced something hard, maybe it's something you've overcome already, maybe it's something that you're still in the thick of, maybe it's something where the concept of overcoming doesn't even really apply. It's just part of your life that you keep living. We don't expect you to have surmounted everything that life has sent your way. So if a commitment or a challenge has played a significant role in your life, then it's relevant to the story of who you are, regardless of whether you're at some kind of endpoint in it. So we get a lot of questions, even with the commitment essay, does it have to be something that I've wrapped up and finished? And so the answer is definitely no. Think really expansively about these prompts.
Okay. Wow, it's super helpful. And I feel like you've actually gone through all the follow-up questions that I was thinking of asking. I mean, I guess, one thing that you and I always talk about when we've done these before is this idea of like the personal versus the professional. And so, like if someone were to say to me about a challenge, I might say, wow, raising children or something. But I also have started a company and I would say, wow, I'm applying to business school. Maybe I need to do the thing that's like the company because that's the professional thing. But it sounds like you guys really are not. It doesn't matter. It's really about the journey and what the person has to say about it.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong here when it comes to personal versus professional. And with the commitment essay, we tracked over the years, sometimes more formally, who wrote about personal versus professional commitments, just more for tracking purposes versus valuation. And we definitely saw there were some cultural and geographic differences in who went personal versus professional, or who was more likely to. And so it doesn't matter. It's truly whatever you're going to be most comfortable writing about. But I would also encourage you to think about the rest of your application and whether this is an opportunity to tell us something that isn't already evident from the other pieces. So obviously we get a lot of information about you as a professional, whether it's from your resume, your letters of recommendation. And there's some areas that definitely blur personal and professional. You can conceive of who you are in a professional way. Let's say that you're someone who's interested in sustainability. This could be something that demonstrates itself through your professional life. It could be your personal life. It could be your community. It could be convincing your family member who doesn't believe in global warming, to think differently. They can span a lot of different areas. So it may make sense for you to tie something back to your professional experience, but I'd really encourage you to think about the essay as an opportunity to tell us something that we don't already know. And that's a complement to all the other information that's shaping the other parts of your application.
Okay, excellent. All right, thanks for elaborating on that. I want to stick with you because we're going to do these lightning round questions, although we're going to go through them very fast, hence the name. So real quick, Laura, what do you love about working in MBA admissions at Yale?
I'm going to say the leftovers, because New Haven has a really, really good food scene, and I get to benefit from a lot of that are hanging around the building.
Excellent. All right, Nicole, how about you? What do you love about working at UNC?
I love that. I love working with MBA students in particular because everyone's completely different, and that's what makes them great.
Okay, excellent. Nathan, how about you? Something at Ross that you love about the team or the setting, whatever it is?
Yeah, I think a lot of people use the word collaborative to describe their teams. And while I love the fact that our team is very collaborative, I'll take it one step further. And I think authenticity. I love the fact that we just can wear our true sleeves when we come into the office, when we go to presentations, when we go and work with students. I think authenticity is my favorite part of Ross.
All right, excellent. Claire, how about you? Something you love about MBA admissions at Columbia? Oh, Claire? Oh, I don't know if she's frozen or not. Well, Megan, let's turn to you if you can hear me. What about you? What do you love about Tepper?
Yeah, I I really like meeting students and interviewing them and getting to know them through the process and kind of seeing what their goals are. I've always enjoyed, what keeps me in admissions is always meeting people at the cusp of kind of where they're coming from and where they're going next. I really enjoy being in that space with people.
Got it. Okay. So I think Claire's maybe coming back on. I think she had a technical thing, but we'll just here. I think she's coming right now. All right. So Claire.
I'm here.
All
I'm
right.
sorry, I froze, and I know
Yeah,
my
you froze.
answer.
All right. What's your answer?
So my answer is that there is always somebody really interesting to learn from, no matter where you are on campus at any time.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, let's stay with you, Claire. We'll just start to go the other way back through, but one piece of non-essay advice that you would give to people interested in Columbia.
So, you know, this sort of plays off what I think someone else was saying before I froze, but is that, you know, I think like authenticity throughout your application, right? You know, we don't want to see you try to be somebody. We want to actually see you, right? And understand how you are going to, you know, take advantage of being in an MBA program and bring something to the community. So
Okay.
authenticity.
Great. Megan, how about you? One piece of non-essay advice.
Non-essay advice. I really like what Claire said. That was along the lines of what I was going to say. So now I feel thrown off. Oh gosh, I don't know. I would say non-essay advice that's not exactly what Claire just said would be when you are getting to the point of making a decision, I think it's really valuable as much as you can to go and visit the schools and really meet people in person, since we're not in a pandemic anymore, because rankings are a somewhat useful tool, but you really can't get a good sense of whether or not you'll fit in with a program unless you're truly on that campus and experiencing the people who live it day in and day out, and also who your potential future classmates would be.
Okay, excellent. Nathan, how about you? One little piece of non-essay advice.
Yeah, I would say it's tied into the essays, but control the narrative. So you know what stories you're going to be sharing in the essays. What are you sharing in your resume? What do you hope to share in your interview? And what are you going to coach your recommender on sharing in their letter of recommendation? So that way you can provide as much and as broad of a story as possible throughout the entire application itself.
Okay, yeah, really good thoughts there. Nicole, how about you? One piece of non-essay advice.
They stole every single one I was going to use. So now I'm going to come up with something unique. Non-essay advice. I would say, see, you guys are good. You took them all.
You can pass if you want to.
Yeah, I'll take a pass on this one. I don't want to be
okay. All right. Laurel, how about you?
Mine is probably just a flavor of what you've heard before, but I like to say connect the dots and fill in the gaps. So think of it from the perspective of how someone who doesn't know you and your experience might look at all the information we're receiving. And if there's something that you think someone might wonder about or have questions about, don't leave us in that position. Better to just sort of get out in front of it and explain why you made a particular transition, or why you may have had a gap in your work experience. It's usually not going to be something dire, but don't leave us wondering what it might be and overestimating its importance.
Yeah, I always like to say you don't want the admissions team to have to play detective when they're going through your file. That's like the nightmare situation. So yeah, spell it out, make sure everything's clear. We have one more quick lightning round question that we're going to run through, and then each of our panelists is going to jump off into their own Zoom breakout room. So I see people asking questions. You'll be able to go to these Zoom rooms. We'll get you the links in a moment. So yeah, just hang in for another second. So this one is in honor of Ross's question. They have, all these different questions. So we picked one and we thought, and I'll stay with you, Laurel. I am out of my comfort zone when ...
So I'll admit, I actually asked my 11-year-old daughter last night how she thought I should answer this. And her immediate response was, when you're admitting people. And at first I was like, that's my job. I shouldn't be out of my comfort zone, but I actually think she's spot on. And maybe when I'm not out of my comfort zone, when admitting people, it's time for me to move on to another role. It's a big responsibility. And it's definitely, I think it's good to be a little bit feeling tense and out of your comfort zone when we're doing this work. So I think that's a good one.
Wow, you have an incredibly perceptive 11-year-old. That is awesome. All right, Nicole, how about you? When are you out of your comfort zone?
I'm out of my comfort zone when everything is very repetitive and the same. So I love traveling all over the world. I love trying new foods. I like everything being the same. So I get very uncomfortable when it's just very repetitive and I know exactly what to expect.
Okay, got it. Nathan, how about you? Now, this is
I'm
unfair
gonna-
because you probably have to answer these every day at work or something since you guys wrote this question, but
It is a little unfair, and I'm going to take a slight twist to it. We updated the grammar, so it is I was out of my comfort zone when.
that's right. Oh,
And
that's right.
so I was out of my comfort zone when I watched my mom and sister jump from an airplane, and that provided me the experience of going skydiving, learning from my mom about how to try out new things, how to be really ambitious and excited about trying out things that I've never done before, knowing that it could be very fearful, but there's nothing to do but give it a try, because what's the harm that could happen? So that is when I'm out of my comfort, or when I was out of my comfort zone.
Yeah, they had parachutes though when they jumped out. Okay.
Yes.
Just making sure, because at first I was like, wait. All right, Claire, how about you? When are you or have you been out of your comfort zone?
Yes, I was following Nathan's lead, and mine was I was out of my comfort zone when swimming with sharks.
Wow.
And I think, again, a very, very similar thought process there, that I think, it's something I've always had a probably irrational bit of fear about, and enjoyed the opportunity to really recognize the beauty and the wonder that they bring to the world, right? And to see that we can do hard things. So,
Wow.
so yeah.
Okay, amazing. Megan, how about you? Out of your comfort zone when?
Just appreciated Claire's nod to Glennon Doyle there. I'm gonna piggyback off of Nathan and do I was out of my comfort zone when. I'm not going to talk about any of some of the wilder, not quite skydiving, but things I've done in my life. I was out of my comfort zone when actually I moved into MBA admissions from undergraduate and art specific recruitment admission. It's a very different beast, but at the end of the day, meeting students and getting to work with them, no matter what their backgrounds, has been really wonderful. So that was my big out of my comfort zone moment.
Excellent. So with that, I want to thank Megan and Claire and Nathan, Nicole, and Laurel for taking part in today's session. I always learn a lot. So I'm really hoping that everyone who tuned in learned a ton. Obviously, if they have questions for you, we're going to get them links. They can go now and chat with each of you individually. You're all going to open up a Zoom room of your own. So thank you, though, so much, each of you, for taking part today. I really appreciate your time. All right, so we're going to send them off. Everyone stay here. We're going to get you the links. Just let our panelists, we're going to give them a minute or two so that they can get set up in their rooms before you all bombard them with questions. So off they go. While we're waiting and giving them that minute, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about ClearAdmit. As you know, I've been talking about this the last couple of weeks. We have a tool on our website called ApplyWire, where you can go and post your target schools, some facts and figures about yourself. It's anonymous. Your name's not attached to this. And then you can get feedback, which is really terrific, because people on our team, we have some former admissions officers who will weigh in. This is all free. You just get additional advice. It's a really good reality check. If you're thinking, oh, I might want to try and apply to these schools in this round, what do people think? And then you'll get comments. In some cases, we will pick your profile and talk about your candidacy, again, anonymously, but on the podcast that we record each week. So that's always fun, because then you can get real-time advice from, I host the podcast once a week with my colleague, Alex Brown. So please do that. The other thing I wanted to mention is just by registering at clearadmit.com to become a part of our community, you now get all the benefits of something that we call ClearAdmit Plus. This is entirely free. It includes a video series, which we call the Admissions Academy, which is a set of 25 short videos. Each one's like 10 minutes or less. And each video focuses on a specific part of the application process, like choosing target schools, coaching your recommenders, writing your essays. There are many, many videos, and it's all free as long as you register on our site. There's a data dashboard. We do a private webinar series once a month. We get together and take your questions in a live webinar. The next one of those will be Monday, August 7th, I think. So definitely check out our site, sign up if you're not already registered, and take advantage of all this free stuff. So what we're going to do now is get you guys the links for the breakout sessions. I do really appreciate all of you making time. I know it's super late. I saw someone was with us from Shanghai and somebody from Seoul. So super late. Appreciate you staying up late. And those of you in California and on the West Coast, thanks for starting your day with us. But really appreciate everyone's time today. The links are out. We've posted them in the chat here, and also you will have the links in your email. If you want to bounce from one school's chat to another, just save the links because you can only be in one at a time, right? So go to Yale, ask them a question, then bounce over to UNC or Columbia or Ross, whoever you want to talk with, but just save the links. You should have them in your email inbox now with whatever email you use to sign up for this webinar. And then again, we've shared them in the chat, so you could always just copy and paste them too if you wanted to do that. Thanks again, everyone. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. And we'll be talking with Cornell, UCLA, Foster, INSEAD, and London Business School. So appreciate everyone's time. Have a great rest of your day and enjoy the breakout rooms with our school panelists.